Welcome, Duke alumni and friends, to this session of the Duke Alumni Forever Learning Institute, an interdisciplinary educational program organized in a set of thematic courses. I am Amy Allen. I am the Senior Program Coordinator for the Lifelong Learning Team with Duke Alumni Engagement and Development. Thank you for joining our program, The Origins of You: How Childhood Shapes Later Life. This program is part of our theme, the Duke Reads Book Club, which offers a unique opportunity to hear directly from Duke faculty about their research and writing across a variety of disciplines and subjects. Today's program is the fourth session in the Duke Reads Book Club series, and we will be discussing Avshalom, Caspi, and Terrie Moffitt's book, The Origins of You: How Childhood Shapes Later Life, which shares what they have learned through years of research about childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and how we develop over the course of our lives. We will have a Q&A session at the end of our discussion, so feel free to put questions that you have in the chat. Joining us today are Avshalom Caspi and Terrie Moffitt. Avshalom Caspi is the Edward M. Arnett Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience at Duke University. His expertise is in developmental psychology, personality assessment, life course epidemiology, and genomics in behavioral science. Terrie Moffitt is the Nan Cohan University Distinguished Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience at Duke University. Her research is uncovering the consequences of a lifetime of mental illness on the processes of biological aging. Welcome to the Forever Learning Institute. We are so glad to have you.
Hey, Amy. Hey, everyone out there. Thank you so much for coming in today. We love teaching Duke students, and we're having fun teaching Duke alumni now. So something new for us.
Thank you. We are so glad to have you. To get us started, could you tell us some about how the research that you describe in your book works and how you have done it?
Want to say something about that? And then we have a little slideshow that we can show you that I think will help illustrate it very well. But maybe Avshalom will give a slight introduction.
Right.
That sounds great.
Okay, so pictures tell the story best. Our work is focused on longitudinal research, and what that basically involves is selecting a group of children and monitoring them and tracking them as they grow up and age. Much of our work is focused on a study in New Zealand, where we have been tracking the same group of 1,000 children for since they were born in 1972-73. Now, we're not that old, and Terrie will tell.
Almost.
Terrie will tell you a little bit more about how we got involved in the work. But the backbone, right, of what we do is longitudinal research, tracking health and development from birth until, well,
the end.
The end.
Yeah. So here we are at the Dunedin longitudinal study, and you can see, first thing you see is that it's in New Zealand, and the point of New Zealand there is the most southern medical school in the world, and there's nothing between there and Antarctica except open ocean, and that's where the study is based. The town looks like this. This is where all the babies were born in 1972 that we've been following. So it doesn't look unlike Durham, North Carolina, and it's about the same size and has a medical school. I'll introduce you to two of the children in the study. This is at the moment that they were born. This happens to be a brother and sister twin pair. It's not a twin study. All the other children are singletons. This is the picture of the first time they were followed up. So they were 3-year-olds, And what you can see here is that the little girl has a brace on her leg. She has cerebral palsy, a mild case, but that reminds me to tell you that that no child was excluded. It's all the babies born in 1 year, 1972 to 73, regardless of their circumstances of health. They were followed up again at age 5, and then 7, and then 9, and 11. And each time the children are followed up, they and their parents come into the clinic and spend a full day of data collection. And I'll show you in a minute the kinds of measures that are collected for them. Here they are at age 13. This is the age when I joined the study, and here you can see me, believe it or not, interviewing a 13-year-old about her mental health. Then we followed them up when they were 15-year-olds. So here I'm an assistant professor now, as lecturing at the University of Wisconsin, then 18-year-olds. Then when they were 21-year-olds. Then this is the point where I met Avshalom, and he joined the study. So you can see him when he used to have black hair in the early days. And what he did in New Zealand, he helped me with the research, and he started his own branch of study on personality development. And he also did quite a bit of fishing. We followed them up when they were 26-year-olds, 32-year-olds, 38-year-olds, and last time, 45-year-olds. And what we're doing right now is following them up as 52-year-olds this year. So this shows you the design of the study starting at birth in 1972-73. And what's down the left-hand side, it shows you the ages at which the children or adults came into the research unit for their full day of data collection. And then the number, that third column, shows you the number that took part each year, and the percent shows you the percentage who took part. So at every single wave, except for that troublesome age 13, more than 90% of the study members took part. So it's remarkable. It's not the case that people who have poor health or poor mental health or life difficulties have dropped out along the way. It's fully representative of the population. So here's what they do when they come into our research unit. This is what the unit looks like now. The study member shows up at 8 o'clock in the morning. We can see 3 to 4 people a day. So it takes us about 2 years to see all 1,000 of them. And here's a study member at, she's pretending to be a study member, but she's 45. So she's coming in to the unit. First thing we do is informed consent. We explain what the research is about and make sure that they understand everything that's going to happen that day. Anything they don't want to do, they can X out on their personal chart. Then the next thing they do is go to the bathroom and give us a urine sample to study kidney function. Then there is a vision assessment. So this, it's quite high tech, run by ophthalmologists in New Zealand. So you see an optical nerve scan, digital retinal imaging. And we do this because it's quite the help of the arteries and veins in the eye, in the retina, is the same as that in the brain itself. And so you can get some pretty good understanding of how much a person is at risk for stroke or Alzheimer's. They go into another session, which is audiology and hearing tests. Then they leave that room and they go into a different room where they're tested by a neuropsychologist for cognitive functions. And this shows you when they were 3, they did exactly the same thing. So they went into a room and they were tested for their cognitive functions at age 3. So we do have a complete record of how their vision, hearing, cognition, and everything about them has changed over the years. Now you see this little girl, it's her mother is sitting by her, but they no longer bring their mothers, they come by themselves. Then at age 45 and now at age 52, they go into a different room where they do what's called a gait right walking test to test how fast they can walk, what their walking speed is. That's a great predictor of how long you will live and of your brain health as well as physical fitness as well. Easy, simple measure, really great usefulness for studying aging. They have anthropometric assessments of their height and weight and body fat. Blood pressure, of course, a key aspect of health. And then they go into a different room where there are respiratory technicians who test their lung function with a suite of measures of respiratory and lung function. And they've been studied over the years for asthma and allergies as well by this team. There's a cardio fitness examination, riding an exercise bike for maximum fitness. And then they get a lunch break. So we do serve them. By now they're getting a little tired, but we have a restorative lunch and a little rest. And then in the afternoon, they go into a series of clinical interviews. We interview them about their mental health, their illegal behavior, substance abuse experiences, their personal finances, their jobs, their relationships with their partners and children, and every aspect of their lifestyles. In between each of these interviews, which is done by a clinical psychologist, there will be interspersed physical function tests. And this is to give them a little bit of variety in between interviews so that they don't get tired and sleepy after their lunch. This one is how many times can you stand up out of a chair in 30 seconds without using your hands? So it's a great test of your physical fitness. There's a test of their grip strength, which again is a wonderful predictor of how long you will live, your predicted mortality. There's a sexual and reproductive health interview, and this is the only one that is done on a laptop, so they have a little more privacy for this one because of the sensitive nature of the questions about everything about their sexuality and sexual function. But the interviewer is there in case they need to ask questions, because this sample does represent the full population. About 5 to 10% of them have real difficulty reading. So we want to make sure that they can understand all of the questions, even on the laptop. We assess their knowledge about health and their knowledge about finances. We have questions about things like compound interest. So we ask them, what do you know about why it's a good idea to start people say you should save as young as you can. Why is that? And then we record what they say, and we bring that information back to Duke, and we code it on how much they know about the idea of compound interest. They go into a bone mineral density DEXA scan then. And they have everybody's favorite towards the end of the day is they get to lie down in a chair and be thoroughly examined by a dentist. And the dental examination is pretty modern and with it. At 5:30, the study member is still lying down, having a rest, and now they get a lot of blood drawn. And all of that is used for genomics research and biomarker research. They go and stay at home if they live in town, but if they don't, they stay in a hotel. And we put them up overnight in a nice place, and they come back the following morning and do MRI brain imaging. Both structural and functional assessments of their brain. That is, what's the brain's structure, and then how does the connectivity between different brain regions work. Now, this study has been multidisciplinary since the children were born in the 1970s. You can see here that when they were little kids, they got a vision assessment, a hearing assessment, a dental assessment, their motor skills, and their lung function, all the same topics that we study today, this year, at age 52, right now, we were measuring those when they were children as well. Then we collect their administrative record data from the New Zealand government, who helps us everything about their travel and migration, their medical records, unemployment checks they may have gotten, the educational degrees. So New Zealand provides us with all of these record data. This is the team who studies, who does all this data collection in New Zealand. You can see Avshalom and me there in the middle in the bright turquoise outfits, but it's quite a large team of professionals who work on it. This is the team at Duke University. This was a couple of years ago, but here we are at our offices, and you can see there lots of technicians and students. The data are shipped back to us at Duke, and we do mostly the analysis here and a lot of the biological wet lab work as well. This was the team last year, so you can see that there are quite a few undergraduate students involved. And we have a lot of fun on our team. So we make Halloween jack-o'-lanterns every year, and we have lots of other kinds of activities. Because this is a study of child development and the origins of you, I always try to get all of our students, graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, and technicians to have as many babies as they want and not feel like that because they're a scientist, they can't have children. So we really work on that, and that's one of our serious projects. This is last year's crop. And here we are back to the book, The Origins of You. These are our funders. That's it. Okay. Stop sharing. I hope that gave you sort of a feeling for what it's like to follow the same people through time for 40 years, 50 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Since you have been following them, like you all personally, since the 80s and 90s, what is it that made you want to write a book about this research now?
Right. Good question. Okay, so
Yeah,
you answer?
yes, a part of this was actually I felt bullied into doing this by Jay Belsky, a colleague of ours who is an author of the book, who really pressed us to take our work, which generally appears in these rarefied journals in medicine and psychology and genetics. And Jay simply bullied us into, do something meaningful with your work. It's really just, confined to scientists and it's critiqued there. And but why don't you open it up? And it was a wonderful opportunity to really try to make the work, a life's work, accessible, and to connect it with teachers, with parents, with guidance counselors, with grandparents, with social workers, to really make the work speak to a larger audience. I don't like being bullied, but I am grateful for having been bullied in this particular regard. It was a real challenge to engage in completely a different sort of writing, and we had a great deal of fun with it.
And we've been having a few of these book clubs, actually quite a lot of these book clubs, with teachers groups or groups of social workers or parent groups. And that's been such an exciting and new fun thing for us.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that a little peer pressure worked.
Yeah.
Jay's quite persuasive.
we did get a question in the chat that why was New Zealand chosen for this study?
Aha. Well, New Zealand started following these children when they were born because they had a national health system, a medical system set up. And at that time in the 1970s, nobody knew how many babies would be born who needed specialist high-risk obstetric care. And they wanted a count. So they did a full 1-year count of all the babies who were born and collected all of their medical records to see what was the number of children who would benefit from having high-risk care. Now, if you remember in the 1970s, there was no neonatal intensive care units then. So this was really initially to see how many staff would need to be trained and how they would set up those units, how many they would need. So that tells you something about how medical technology has changed across the years. Then the study, when I joined, I was finishing graduate school at the University of Southern California. I was looking for a sample of preteens that I could study because typically children do quite well on their mental health in elementary school, but when they hit middle school and start to have puberty and go into adolescence, a lot of young people go off the rails then. They experiment with drugs, with shoplifting. They get, have bad initial sexual debut experiences. And that's what I wanted to study at the time. So I was looking for a cohort who I could interview because the children spoke English. I found these cohorts in places like Denmark and Sweden and places like that. But it was the people in New Zealand who really invited me to come to Dunedin. So I got a fellowship from the National Institute of Health in the United States. And I went there to New Zealand to stay for 2 years to interview all 1,000 children. And that's how it started for me.
And do you find that the research about New Zealanders is broadly generalizable to other places in the world?
Yeah, we've tested that systematically. Maybe you could say something about how that's being done.
So the question of generalizability is a really, really important one. And to that end, we've also been involved and collaborated and initiated projects in other countries. So, for example, back in the 90s, we worked on a study in Pittsburgh with inner city youth because we were really interested in testing some of the findings that we were getting in New Zealand in an American inner city context. So that was work that we had done there. Later on, towards the late 90s, we began a new study in the UK, which was kind of a sort of like the Dunedin study, but with twins. And again, the goal there was to see if we could replicate the findings from Dunedin in a different setting. Of course, there are other independent researchers who conduct a lot of the replication studies of work that comes out of Dunedin. On the whole, the findings from Dunedin have withstood the test of generalizability, with the important caveat that we're talking about research done in the Western world, right? Does it generalize to the entire world? I can't say that it does because we just, that work hasn't necessarily been done. But tests in North America, in Europe, throughout Europe, in Brazil, those are settings in which the work has been to which the work has been generalized. I should also say that although this is work that's been done in New Zealand, it's really had and I think this has been just terrific. It's had an influence on both policy and in other countries. So examples would be findings from the Dunedin study having been used in Supreme Court in the United States in Supreme Court cases. work that the American Psychiatric Association in their diagnostic manuals has relied on findings from the Dunedin study. So I think those are ways in which this study, although done in one country, has had broad impact beyond it.
Yeah, most of the papers that we publish now in scientific journals don't have just the Dunedin study in them. So we will get an initial finding using the Dunedin study, and we will systematically go to other data sets. Let's say the UK Biobank, which has 500,000 British people, or the American Health and Retirement Study, or National Health Assessment and Nutrition Study in the United States, which has 17,000, 20,000 Americans in their 50s. And we, first of all, we test the finding to see if it also applies in those other countries and those other data sets. But often those data are collected in those studies over the phone, in questionnaires on the internet, or they only have medical records. We're the one that has bring the study members into the unit and have clinical quality measurement done the way that you would when you're seeing a healthcare professional. So then we can go back to the Dunedin study and say, how can this finding actually influence healthcare in the clinic? So that it's a give and take between different data sets these days.
So for someone who is new to your work or new to your book, are there particular findings or chapters in your book that you would point people to that you find particularly engaging or applicable?
Yeah, it depends on really what's interesting to your family, you and your family as as a reader. One of the things that Jay Belsky insisted upon was that every chapter is a standalone. So it's not a book that you read from the beginning to the end. You can dip into a chapter according to what appeals to you. So there would be a chapter on childhood aggression. There'd be a chapter on ADHD. There'd be a chapter on
Cannabis.
use. So if whatever seems relevant to you and your own family is the place where you start. And then if you like that chapter, then you might want to read some of the other ones. So those are the ones I would recommend to start with. But you don't have to start at the beginning and read to the end. Although I must say that the first chapter is very sweet because in it, Jay wrote that one and he wrote why he valued our friendship and wanted to write about our research. You know, his wife said, "Why don't you write about your own research?" And he said, "Well, I really want to do this." So.
It seems like you've had a remarkable number of people stick with this research over time. And I'm curious why you think that is, what keeps people coming back, and what you know, if anything, about the people who have fallen off.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is actually a good opportunity to really pause and also thank the participants.
Yeah,
right?
They're awesome.
They're awesome. I mean, the fact that 1,037 children who were enrolled in the study, who were born in Dunedin, were enrolled in the study, that 50 years later, right? 94% of them are still involved. Is remarkable. And I can speak and we will just a little bit about why we think that's the case. But first and foremost, it's because they're remarkable. And they've really, just the fact that they've been willing to give so much of themselves over the course of their lives to the study is amazing. I think this is a huge problem for science today, for anything that involves science that involves humans, right? That people are not interested in being involved and partaking in research.
Yeah, they're too busy, they're fed up, they don't trust government, they don't trust science. So it's nearly impossible to get people to take part.
The National Academy of Science in the United States a few years ago published, a report that I think was really rather alarming about how it is that people are refusing to participate in research. And when they do take part, they tend to drop out. And if we believe that policies, health policies, social policies, right, need to be fundamentally based on an evidence base, but people aren't taking part, we have a problem. The Dunedin study, I think, has been unusual in its retention, and in fact, I would say unique, right? That so many are still continuing to take part. There is no systematic dropout, and by that I mean it's not the people who have
It's
dropped
different people
out.
every year.
Right. So at every assessment phase, it seems to be different people who are dropping out. There are a handful of hardcore, a couple, 20 people or so who have dropped out and have refused to participate for many years. But by and large, we get over 90% retention at every phase, and the people who, will not participate for reasons really that have to do with, idiosyncratic life circumstances. So the non-participation is, for all intents and purposes, pretty random.
So why do they take
Yeah.
part so well there? Some people guess that it's because they're trapped on an island and they can't get away from us, but that's not it. New Zealand actually has this enormous wave of out-migration at the year that they finished high school, because the European Union was created and all of New Zealand's export products contracts in Europe were canceled, because now you needed to buy Danish butter, not New Zealand butter. So they had a deep recession, and many of the study members moved to Australia, to Canada, wherever they could get work. One of the things that we do is that we offer them, if they would like to take part, we will fly them back. And then that way they get to visit their families. So that's a big draw. But even for the people who live locally and who never left, they have a sense of almost like being like an Olympic team by now. Like they have a feeling, of belongingness, that they are responsible for exporting medical knowledge to the world from their small little country that's very often even left off of maps. So there is a sense of pride that everybody has in the study, the staff as well as the participants.
That's wonderful. We are getting a lot of questions in the chat.
Good, great.
So I'm going to
great.
start
I saw there
trying
was
to,
one about ethnicity.
yes, I'm going
Shall
to
I try to
flip
answer
through
that
those,
one?
but I can pull that one up, which is what can you speak to the demographic ethnic makeup of the study members? And the follow-up to that was, how does the study in New Zealand and the UK demonstrate application to people of color when we are so aware of disparities between the white population and people of color in the US?
Right. Well, obviously, because these people were born in 1972, there's been a lot of in-migration to New Zealand since, but they're not captured in that 1972 birth cohort. So when we export findings from the Dunedin study, we can't say, okay, right, we studied plenty of people of African Americans or Afro-Caribbean descent, or Islamic descent, or any sorts of groups like that. We can't even say that we've studied a large number of people of Pacifica and Maori descent. And that's because in the 1970s, the South Island of New Zealand was very strongly Scottish, Scots-Irish kind of descent. So that's the ethnic distribution of over 90% of the study members. We do have a few people of Maori descent, but not very many. So that's an issue even within New Zealand today, because the New Zealand government would like to know more about the health problems of their disadvantaged ethnic ancestry groups, and we don't have those. What we do is As I said before, we identify other data sets that do represent and focus on ethnic groups. So for example, our aging work that we're doing now, studying the pace of aging and the epigenetic factors in the pace of aging, those have been replicated in the Strong Heart study of Native Americans, the SHAPE and the FACTS studies of African Americans, let's see, give me some other ones of these. The Taiwanese Biobank, there's a study in the Philippines. So we're systematically, we go around the world and we identify people who have studies of different ethnic groups and ask them to please implement our measures, and we help them. And we actually have a grant from the National Institute of Health to do that outreach. It's really interesting. It's working out very well.
That's great. We have a number of questions that are sort of similar that I'll group together, which is sort of about what findings you have found that have most surprised you, that you find the most interesting, or sort of a high level, like what are some big takeaways that you have from all of this research?
Yeah, do you have
Do you want to go first?
No, well, I don't know. It's something that surprised us, Well, most everything surprises us because we don't know the answer before we do the project.
I would say probably one of the most striking findings has been that most mental disorders actually onset very early on in life. So in fact, 75% of adults who present with a mental health condition, with a mental disorder, will have had mental health issues already during the first 15 years of life, which is really remarkable, right? The finding is interesting because I think it really drives home the point of why it is that early prevention and early intervention is so vital, right? That the roots of adult mental health really are identifiable in early life. And if you want to get in there and make life better, that's when you need to be doing it. And I think that really sort of, those findings have really sort of given, sort of teeth, right, to early intervention efforts.
Similarly, there's someone who was asking, can I find it? If there's anything in particular you think parents should know, if parents are coming to your research, what you would hope they take away from it.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing that came out of the book, and by doing the book, I learned this about our research. I didn't know it before we did the book. Jay had a hunch, which is one reason why he wanted to do the book. He took, we had always taken going project by project, doing one on ADHD, one on cannabis use, one on adolescent sexual risky sex, one on early symptoms of schizophrenia in adolescence. Each of these focuses, we had been looking at what's the continuity? How, if this happens to someone, do they have an elevated risk for later life? So that's mainly our, we were working on that kind of point of view. Jay observed that in actual fact, if you looked closely at all the tables and charts and graphs across all of those publications, there are more people who turn out well than who turn out poorly. So even if a young person starts with a learning disability or with a diagnosis of ADHD or with adolescent delinquency, paper after paper after paper in the Dunedin study, it shows that the majority of the young people come right. And this was, a sort of like a whiplash for me. I just thought, this is in my own data, and I just haven't put it all together because I haven't looked across all of the chapters. So we did try to pull that out in the book, that theme, and I think it's a reassuring theme to parents to teachers to clinical psychologists, people, anybody that works with young people, that having a problem as a child or an adolescent is not it's not a life sentence. In fact, most kids grow out of most bad things and turn out well. It's quite amazing, really. So it's an uplifting message, a reassuring message. Get help if the child needs it, but don't panic.
That's incredibly reassuring. That's
But
really
don't ignore it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So two questions that I saw that are somewhat similar. One is, when you were doing these studies, like for instance, the dental study, does the research involve treating any of that? And do you find, sort of part B, do you find that when people are having all of these tests done every 3 years, that leads them to have any different approach to their health and taking care of themselves?
Yeah, this is a really important question, and of course, we have to test that systematically. And so each year when we collect data, we compare the numbers in the Dunedin study as against the New Zealand National Health Survey, and as against the electronic medical records in the New Zealand National Health System, for the country as a whole. And what we have found is that our study members have not improved. The same percent are obese, the same percent smoke, they're the same on number of doctor visits a year. They're, all of the prevalence of depression, it's the same in the sample as it is in the country as a whole. So I guess one thing we learned from that is that if just coming in and having a day of examinations every 3 or 4 years would really help you, why not? We would do that, right? So they haven't changed in a way that makes them super healthy or in any way not representative of their country.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And does doing any of these studies lead to any interventions, like with the dental issues?
So one of the questions that people often ask, and I think that where you're going with this is, do we give them feedback each time if we find something wrong?
Mhm.
This is a study of natural development without intervening in people's lives. And I think this is a secret to one reason why they continue to take part, is we don't really mess with them. And I'll just kind of explain a bit about why, is that from the outset, when they were small children, the deal with the families and the deal that they sign up to in the informed consent is that we're collecting the data, but we don't give you feedback unless there's something that is life-threatening. So in that MRI scan, if we find a brain tumor or an aneurysm, yes, we put you in touch with neurology, the study member in touch with neurology, and get them help. When we found someone with a very high blood lead level from their occupation, we've gotten them help. So if it's something that's life-threatening, yes, we do intervene. Otherwise, we don't. And one of the reasons why we don't is because these multiple problems tend to coincide in people's lives. So the study member would start to feel really hassled and picked on if we said, you're depressed, you have bad lung function, you're unfit, you're overweight, you can't read well. You can see where this is going. So we don't do that. And they get to feel that they are taking part. They can learn a lot about themselves, I think, from taking part, but we don't give them, say, normative tables. We don't tell them what percentile they are on, say, their height or weight or blood pressure, anything like that. They are living, in a country where they have everybody has a family doctor. So, and it doesn't cost a lot to go. So most of those kinds of things that we collect data on, they can find out by just going to see their own doctor and having an annual physical.
Now, whereas intervening would seem to be the right thing to do, it's also important to remember that intervening would also undermine the entire enterprise.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, a natural history study.
Mhm.
That said, what is vital is to remind the study members throughout, as they have been, that this is, as it were, the deal, right? That we are not in a position to give you feedback, so that there is never an expectation of that taking place, unless, of course, there is imminent threat to one's health or well-being.
That's why we spend so much time at the beginning of each assessment going over the informed consent, and we send them lots of information in advance of their appointment that says, this is what we're going to collect data on, and you don't have to do anything that you don't want to. But they understand that it's a non-intervention study from the outset. The ethics, we have an ethics review every year at Duke and at the University of Otago too. So we have 2 ethics committees for oversight. And one of the principles that they often bring to bear on this study is that it's unethical to ask people to take part in research that cannot answer the question. And the question here is normal development. So if we started to give people more intervention, fix them up with a therapist, get them a treatment for this and that and the other thing, we would actually have to shut the study down because it would be unethical.
I think Debbie is asking a question of, even if they ask for the data, you don't give it to them, but that's how I'm understanding it is the data is available, but you do not then align them with healthcare services or necessarily interpret that data for them or put it in a broader context. But they can see everything that you collect.
Right. And for every, many of the data they give us. So like in the mental health interview, they're telling us if they feel anxious or depressed or hear voices or whatever. So it's, we don't know anything secret about them that they don't know. For some of the data, let's say the genomic data, we do know a secret that they don't know, or the brain scan. So those are handled ethically differently by the ethical oversight committees at the universities. And we do have every time when a study member is seen within just a few hours, the medical experts go over all the data that we collected, and there are danger signs that if blood pressure was above a certain cutoff that's pre-specified, or the neurologist looks at their brain scan, and we get back to them right away. So if we don't get back to them, then they know that there was nothing wrong.
We do have a question about aging, and what you all have learned through this process about perhaps ways to slow aging or extend life expectancy.
Yeah. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I want to actually give a pre-answer. How's that? Which is that, and Terrie could say more about the aging research itself. But the comment that I wanted to make is about aging is really about our own research careers. We began this work because we were interested in child development and adolescent development. We were really sort of early life researchers, right?
Yeah.
And one of the remarkable things about this study is that it's become our best teacher. By committing to working on the study over the course of our own careers and over the course of the study members' lives, our own interests and our own work has shifted dramatically, right? So whereas once upon a time we were really interested in studying puberty, right? Today we find ourselves studying, menopause, right? So our own careers have really sort of tracked, and our research interests have really tracked those of the study members, and that's the way in which they've really been our teachers.
I should say, this is one of the fabulous things about being at Duke for us too, is that because we can't be an expert in every single thing, and it's our job to keep up with the study members, what are the issues in their lives as they're aging. We used to be interested in baby teeth, and now we're interested in the kinds of dental problems that people have, in late life, right? So there are, and the retina scans and the brain scans. All of these, we find experts at Duke who are really world experts in each of these topics. Doctors who are really in women's health, who are really expert in menopause, people at Duke Medical Center, Aging Center, who are really world-renowned experts in the retina. So, the opportunities for having other people at Duke feed into this study are quite amazing, and also people at the University of Otago as well.
No, back to aging.
Back to aging. Okay, so back to aging. What have we found? So, we have a sort of a special thing about this study that no other study of aging has, and that is that we have collected all of these, what you might call biomarkers, like tests of kidney function, tests of periodontal disease, test of lung function, heart function, brain function. Every few years as people are growing up. So we can model all of those data, and we have developed a model of aging as people, the whole cohort as a whole, is getting worse and worse. So people are getting, their blood pressure is getting higher and higher, their cholesterol is getting higher and higher, their waist is getting thicker and thicker. And so we can track that in the cohort, and then we can track how individuals in the cohort do on those tests. So some people are aging a lot faster than the other people in the cohort, and some people are aging a lot slower. This has given us the super exciting opportunity to then look at what is it that accounts for who's aging fast and who's aging slow. Is there anything that we can identify that could be intervened on to increase people's health span, the years that they live with health? And because our study cohort is in their 50s, we're looking for things that could be done while you're still fit and young that would influence and give you a much better late life. So that's the kind of thing that we're doing right now. But it all started with building the statistical model of the longitudinal data, repeating all, hearing, vision, memory, all those test scores over time allowed us to build that. There are plenty of other studies around the world, and quite a few of them in the United States, who have come up with what they call a bio-age measure. How old are you biologically? All of those are done on cross-sectional data, so at one point in time. And so they have not, none of them have studied change yet, the way the Dunedin study has been able to. That's pretty special.
Well, we are running out of time. We haven't gotten to all of the questions yet, but I do want to say there will be a follow-up email with a link to your book. And if you all would like to provide any other resources, we can include those in the follow-up email. And this, you all can continue to dive into this information. But before we wrap up, I do want to ask, so this is ongoing. You mentioned that you're currently at the 52-year-old check-in. So where is it now? What are you two looking at now? And what would you like to leave folks thinking about as they leave this discussion?
Yeah, I'll let Avshalom talk about the pace of aging calculated in the epigenome just in a sec. But I want to say, when you say that the study is ongoing, it is ongoing, but we have to raise money for it every 5 years, and right now that's endangered. So yesterday, the National Institute of Health announced a new policy that there won't be subcontracts to foreign universities. So this endangers our data collection. We do have subcontracts from Duke to the University of Otago to pay for this. So one of the things that we're doing right now to make sure the study is ongoing is we're in a mad scramble to apply to private foundations and donors. So if anybody watching has ideas, I don't think we can rely on the National Institute of Health 100% anymore. So you want to say something about Dunedin pace just quickly?
Yeah, so where's this going? So Terrie had described how we have been monitoring all of these different biomarkers, each indexing different organ systems in order to see how they change over time, in order to see how some people, they're aging faster than others, right? The idea of aging being that, there's a coordinated sort of or a decline of multiple organ systems happening at more or less the same rate over time. But one of the things that we've done that we're very excited about in the Dunedin study is we've come up with what is essentially a simple blood test that captures all of that information. And that's something that we've been able to derive through machine learning, where we basically get DNA data. We convert that into data about methylation in DNA, and using that information to capture how fast somebody has been aging over the past 25 years. That's a test that is now readily available, both in particular to many research groups who can then really use it both to understand why it is that some people are aging faster than others and to hopefully develop interventions, but also to forecast who is at greater risk for cognitive decline and dementia. So we're really very excited about that.
Yeah, and it's available direct to consumer as well. So you can just Google Dunedin pace for pace of aging calculated in the epigenome. It has this kind of funny name. And it's possible to get it for yourself. So if you wanted to do something like stop smoking, join a gym, join Weight Watchers, go on Ozempic, you could do a before and after test yourself and see if you can slow your own aging.
Wow. Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Thank you for a great session, and thank you to our audience for joining us. Today's session was recorded and will be posted on the Duke Alumni Lifelong Learning YouTube channel. And also be on the lookout for that follow-up email I mentioned with links to resources highlighted today. This is the last session in our Duke Reads Book Club series, but keep an eye on our website and the Forever Learning newsletter to learn about our upcoming Fall Forever Learning Institute themes. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next Forever Learning Institute. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much. Great fun.